Hi, I thought I would quickly jump on here today to talk about bus stop method division and how to introduce it in a Waldorf way. So to begin with, my son is 9 years old. He would be, if he was in school, he would be in grade 3. Now, some Waldorf schools introduce bus stop method division in grade 3, others introduce it in grade 4. Jamie York, who is a well-known Waldorf mathematician, he recommends, or I haven't read this, but my friend who is a Waldorf teacher as well, she told me that he recommends introducing it in grade 4. However, my 9-year-old has been asking me for a while, because he performs some complex calculations and he finds it not difficult to do, but just really lengthy to do when without the bus stop method shortcut for him. So using mental methods, it's quite lengthy, and he gets frustrated sometimes because he does a lot of calculations. So I finally introduced it to him this week. And the reason why I was delaying it is because I wanted him to really have a strong mental maths foundation. And I feel like children build connections, like understanding that multiplication is the inverse of division and all of that. I think it comes from mental methods. When they perform those mental methods and they're actively involved in the process and understanding the process, they identify the connection and the link between the operations, whereas when they learn a process, they kind of mindlessly just repeat that process, and there isn't much additional learning that takes place. So I have my reservations towards introducing the shortcuts too soon, but also once a child is ready and they've practiced mental methods plenty, which he has, I think whether they're in grade 3 or grade 4, you need to introduce the bus stop method division. So following the child and once they're ready. Okay, so moving on to the Waldorf way of introducing topics. Waldorf, we use stories to introduce new topics, and this is all the way from grade 1 through to grade 7 or 8. And as such, I needed to find a story or come up with a story, as I have done in grade 1 and grade 2 for the main lesson maths blocks. So I needed one for division as well. I found it really challenging. I couldn't think of one myself. I needed an idea to at least, something to work from. So I searched online, I looked around, and I haven't been able to find a story. However, I'm on a Facebook group. It's a grade 3 Waldorf. I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's a Facebook group for grade 3 Waldorf teachers and I think home educators. So I'm in a group and I posted there and I asked if anyone had any ideas for a story, and people shared how they had introduced it. So the story that I used, and the idea isn't mine, the bakery idea isn't mine, the story is totally mine. So it's a bakery, and it's a very famous bakery, and shopkeepers come to buy all their bread and baked goods from this bakery because they're famous and they produce lovely baked goods. So in the morning, people come and queue up outside the shop, waiting for it to open so that they can buy as much bread or whatever else, but we stuck to bread, as much bread as possible. So I drew the shop. My son wasn't convinced that it looked like a shop. He said sorry, I've moved that. I wanted to flip the camera so that I could draw on the chalkboard, but I'm not sure it's going to work. I don't think I'll be able to flip the camera. No, maybe not. Okay. I will share a picture of it on my website. And I'll link my website in the write-up, in the description section. I'm not very good. I don't use this, YouTube. I don't use YouTube that much. I just record. And also I I just sit on my phone and I record because it's the easiest way to do it. So, you know, I don't use any fancy features and I don't know how to use them. Anyway, so the description, I will put a link in there and hopefully you can click the link. And that will be to my website, and I'll put a picture of the chalkboard drawing on the website. So I drew the shop, which was like this because that's the bus stop method. And this here was the shop entrance. So my son wasn't convinced that that was the entrance and that the door should be at the front. But anyway, I said to him, look, this is the style of shop that I have in my mind. So this is how I'm going to draw it. And so we had the shop, and I had 7 shopkeepers outside the bakery. And I drew 7 little stick men. And I said they've come to the shop to buy bread in large quantities because they want to sell it in their shop. And then I drew loaves of bread. I said the bakery have already managed to bake, I think we went for 80 loaves of bread. So I had 8 loaves of bread. I said to him, I can't draw 80, that's too many loaves. I'll draw 8 and I'll put a 10 in each loaf. And then that's 10 times 8 is 80. Now I said there are 7 shopkeepers, so the baker has to divide this bread, the 80 loaves of bread, between the 7 shopkeepers. How many loaves of bread will the shopkeepers get? And he said to me, oh, they'll get 10 each. And then there are 10 left over. And as soon as he said there are 10 left over, I said, hold that just there. I said, okay, so they will get 1/10 each. So I put a 1 on the top. And then I said, the baker has just come back with an additional, I can't remember, 3 loaves, let's say. So I said 3 is an easy number to draw, an easy number of loaves to draw. So I drew 3 more next to, so here I had the tens column with the 8 loaves of bread, and they had 10 written inside them. And then next to that, I drew 3 more loaves with a number 1 in them. And then I said, okay, so we had the 10 left over from here. Now we've got 3 more. So I'm going to take these 10 loaves over here, and we will now have 13 loaves of bread. So between these 7, actually, we had 4 loaves there. So it was 14 loaves of bread. So I said, now we've got 14 loaves of bread. How many more will each shopkeeper get? And he said, oh, they'll get 2 each. So I said, right, 2 each. And I put the 2 on top. And so we got 12. And that was the story. And then I showed him with numbers instead of loaves, the same calculation. So it was 84 divided by 7. I hope I remember it correctly. Anyway, so it was 84 divided by 7. So I drew the bus stop, 84 inside, 7 on the outside. And then he was like, oh, that's the tens column and that's the ones column. And I said, exactly. And then what happens, we look at how many 7s there are in 8, but it's 8 tens, and there is 1 7 in 8. So we put the 1 on top, and then we're left with 1, which is actually 110. So when we rename that and take it over to the ones column, we end up with 10 plus 4, which is 14. But every time, if you just take the 1 and you put it there on top of the number, you can read the number as it is. It will be 14. Or if you've got 3 left over in, let's say we're doing hundreds, and in the hundreds column, you've got 3 left over. So you take that over into the tens column, and the tens column has 2 in it. So 3 hundreds is 30 tens. And then we've got 2, so 32 we would have in that column. So I explained that to him, but he has a really solid foundation in place value. We've done a lot of place value. You will be able to find place value resources on my website and also in my Etsy shop. So owing to his, really secure foundation in place value, he understood this with no problem. And then he went on to make up some questions for himself and just work through the questions. I have his book here, actually. I can show you the questions that he came up with. But before I show you the questions, there's something I want to say. In your very first lesson, when you introduce division, you want to make sure that the first digit in the number that you are dividing, so that's inside the bus stop, that number, the first digit, should be larger than the number of shopkeepers. Because if you have 7 shopkeepers that are coming to buy, let's say 50 loaves of bread, then we can't, how many 7s are in 5? It gets complicated. We need to show them, which when I was at school, it was called carrying, but I don't like to call it carrying. I like to call it renaming. So we would have to show them that we would rename those 5 10s and take them into the 10s column. So 5 10s would, sorry, not the 10s column, the 1s column. So would end up as 50 1s. And we add those 50 1s onto whatever is in the 1s column. But yes, then they would have, let's say 54, and you can't use, there's no point. If you're starting with a 2-digit number, which is what I would recommend, go with a small 2-digit number. Make sure the first digit in your number is larger than the number of shopkeepers. I didn't introduce any terminology, no quotient, dividend, anything at this stage. It's not important. I know some Waldorf teachers like to, and that's usually their first lesson involves characters that have the names, but I felt it would just complicate things and that the terminology can come later. And I think it would be very easy for him to remember and understand once he's, he knows how to do it. Once he knows how to do it, he knows what's outside, what's inside, how to perform the calculation. I think it would be very easy for him to learn the names of all of the numbers. So that's one point that I wanted to make. Also, initially, in your first lesson, don't go for questions that have remainders. So questions that will divide perfectly. Now, the challenge with that can be that if your child is very good at their times tables, they might say, oh, I don't need bus stop method for this because I can just use my times tables to divide that. However, so you could, in that case, you could maybe use 3-digit numbers instead, and then that tackles that problem. What else? And if they get it straight away like my son did, you could move on fairly quickly even in the first lesson. So I'll show you what he did. Let's see. His book is here. I hope that you can see it. I don't know, it's going to be the wrong way round, isn't it? I don't know. It's backwards for me. Anyway, so he started with, I can't even flip the camera. I'm really sorry. I think once you start recording, you are not able to flip the camera. No, it's not letting me flip the camera. Sorry. Okay, so he started with, that was our first one there, 84 divided by 7. There's the shop. So he drew his shop differently to me. And he decided he wanted windows. And I said, well, where does the 84 go if you've got that many windows? So he put a decimal point and 2 zeros. And yes, it worked perfectly. So we did 84 divided by 7, which is 12. And then he made up a question, which was 97 divided by 8. And he got to 12 and said, there's 1 left over. So what do I do? And I just said, that's remainder 1. We write it as remainder 1. So he did that. There you are. He then tried this question, 91 divided by 7, which divided perfectly. So he didn't have a remainder. And then he said that he wanted to go for a 3-digit number. So he did 504 divided by 3. He made that up and it divided perfectly, 168. And then he went on to 699,000. And here we are, an even larger number. And then finally he did a decimal number there and he managed to do it. So he progressed very quickly in the first lesson. However, you just have to follow your child, and you have to base the lesson how quickly you progress, how you introduce it, all based on where your child is at and how much they can cope with. But yes, my advice is for the first lesson, just introduce 2-digit numbers to be divided, and they should divide perfectly so that you're not dealing with remainders, because then it's too many concepts that you're teaching at once. Not dealing with remainders, and also just ensure that the first digit in your number is larger than the number outside. That's it. I would love to hear your comments and feedback about this video. I literally have just sat down in my living room, everyone's gone to bed, and I wanted to write a blog post because I feel like I've discovered an amazing way to teach bus stop method division, and I have been thinking about it since September. So I've been thinking about it, I have been researching, and I have only just felt like I'm at a good place. Also, I was delaying it for him as well, but also myself. I feel like I was at a good place now, and that I had come up with a story that would work, and that I felt confident in introducing it to him, and it's worked really, really well. So we will now move on and look at division, more questions with remainders, also larger numbers, and decimals as well. So those are the 3 lessons that I want to do, but I want to do them separately so that he gets a bit of practice. So I don't really have to teach much, probably do 1 example on the board and then give him a worksheet. Word problems are really good as well. So I would like to give him word problems where he has to set up, rather than the question set up for him and he just has to solve it. I'd like to give him word problems, because then he has to read it, he has to interpret the question, and he has to extract information from it and then use that correctly to construct the bus stop and the division problem. So I would like to do that. So maybe start with questions that have remainders, then move on to, I can do large numbers. So larger numbers, we can just do larger numbers with remainders. So that's 1 lesson. And then the second lesson can be decimal division, and see how he gets on. And then I will come back and share with you what we have done. Keep checking my website. I hope to write a blog post when I get the time. It's quite time consuming. This was quicker, though it's taken me about 17-18 minutes to record this, but I haven't had to prepare for it or think about it. I just came here, press record, and I have shared with you. And yes, I share when I get a chance to update my website, because home ed life is busy. I share sample pages from our main lesson books, and also the chalkboard drawings. My Instagram also has a highlight that has chalkboard drawings in it. I will go on there now and update it so that you can see the chalkboard drawing for this lesson that I taught. Anyway, I look forward to receiving comments from you and feedback. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments below. Good luck. Thank you. Bye-bye.